we're going to talk about the quadratic formula today. And before we get into the long quadratic formula, we're going to talk about bits and pieces of the quadratic formula called the discriminant. So you're going to be able to find the discriminant, and then you're going to be able to solve a quadratic function using the actual formula. Okay, well, before I get into that, we just covered how to graph a quadratic function. There's some graphs here. But when I ask you to solve a quadratic function, in essence, what I'm asking you to do is figure out where the graph hits the x-axis, which is called a zero. So if I say find the zeros, I'm saying what's the answer when the graph hits the x-axis. So I'm looking for x equal type of answers. So if you don't want to graph every problem and try to estimate, there is a formula that will always get you to that answer. The downside of graphing is it takes a long time. And sometimes if the answers were, let's say, a decimal, you wouldn't be able to estimate properly. Whereas a quadratic formula is a little bit longer to remember, but it will always give you the correct exact answer. So the quadratic formula is a real long formula, which I'll give you in a few minutes. But a part of the quadratic formula has this in it. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out your b's number. So you're actually going to throw in a number here, and you're going to square it. Minus 4 times a is another number, and then c is another number. So this will tell you several things, okay? If you do all of this work and you get 0 as that final answer, that means that the graph would hit the x-axis one time, and that one time is the only solution you have. If you do the discriminant and you get some kind of negative answer, it doesn't matter what it is, graphically this is what it looks like. Okay, well, if your graph never hits the x-axis, then you're going to have a no solution. If you get a positive discriminant, that means your graph will eventually hit the x-axis twice, and you're going to write down both of those for your answers. So your answers, you could either get one answer, no answers, or 2 answers. You're not going to get more than 2. So now we're going to actually start solving our problems. But I want to give you the entire formula now. So your quadratic formula is this. So some teachers teach the whole quadratic formula all at once. Some do it by bits. So what I like to do is I like to split it so you can see something. This here in red is called the discriminant. Whereas this section right here, if that should look familiar, that's how you started to graph things. Okay, so that's an old formula on graphing. We're going to throw that all together with a plus and a minus and a square root symbol, and it's going to be called the quadratic equation. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to have you do the discriminant so you can think first, okay, well, how many answers am I going to have and what are they going to look like? And then I'm going to have you actually finish the formula. But before we can do anything like that, you need to make sure that this is in standard form. So in standard form, it means everything's on one side. So let's take a look at this. It's always easier on you if your square term is positive. So we're going to bring both of these to this side. And to do that, we have to negate them. So we're going to go negative 12x. And then to get rid of minus 5, you're going to add 5. And again, we want to go ahead and put this in order. All right, so A is 2, B is negative 12, and C is 18. So I'm going to do the discriminant. B squared. Always make sure you put your B in parentheses. And then go ahead and let's do the math here. So if we do that, that's going to be 144 minus 8 times 18. Notice I put join these together, and then 8 times 18 is 144. And you'll get 0. Now, if you want to just type this whole thing in your calculator all at once, it will just give you 0. You don't have to do this step by step by step. It'll give you the 0 right away. So what does a discriminant of 0 mean? It means that I'm going to get one answer. So now let's finish the problem. So now I'm going to go x equals the opposite of my b. Since my b here is negative 12, the opposite is positive 12. Plus or minus the square root of this answer. That's the discriminant. That's why I like you to do it first. All over 2 times your a. So I'm going to go ahead and do the square root of 0. The square root of 0 is just 0. And if I take 12 and add 0, what happens? Nothing. It's still 12. So if I take 12 and subtract 0, what happens? Nothing. So when you get a 0 here, that means that this whole part here is gone. And it's just going to be 12 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So graphically speaking, I'm saying that my graph would hit the x-axis at the point 3, but I don't feel like going through and graphing it.